بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Finishing our classes on Kitab al-Siyam, the chapter of fasting from Sunan Abi Dawood rahimahullah ta'ala. We have reached, what we're going to study from today is chapter number 74. Chapter of a woman fasting without the permission of her husband. Notice that Imam Abu Dawood gives a chapter title, as is common with the Imams of Hadith, chapter title that doesn't tell you what the position is. Doesn't say the obligation or the prohibition or the recommended nature or the disliked nature. Rather, a chapter of a woman fasting without the permission of her husband. We do not understand from that this is a sunnah from the Prophet ﷺ, that a woman should fast without the permission of her husband. Rather, we understand from the chapter title that this hadith or this chapter is discussing the idea of a woman fasting without the permission of her husband, without any reference to what the ruling will be. And that is from the best of manners in dealing with the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, is to not put forth your opinion in front of his verdict. So here we have the statement of the Prophet ﷺ as narrated to us from Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu in a hadith collected by both Al-Bukhari and Muslim in their two sahihs, that the Prophet ﷺ said, لا تسوم المرأة وبعلها شاهد إلا بإذنه غير رمضان ولا تأذن في بيته وهو شاهد إلا بإذنه. That a woman should not fast while her husband is present, except with his permission, except for Ramadan, and she should not allow, or she may not allow in her house she may not allow anyone without his permission while he is present. The hadith again, as mentioned, as in Al-Bukhari and Muslim. Bukhari's hadith does not have the phrase غير Ramadan. That phrase غير Ramadan, and other than Ramadan, and she may fast without her husband's permission in Ramadan, is not in the text of Al-Bukhari. Rather, it's understood that no woman needs her husband's permission to fast the obligatory fast of Ramadan. And there's no need for that phrase, غير Ramadan, for it to be in the hadith. It's understood as well, without the phrase. So then the meaning of the hadith is regarding what? Optional fasting, not obligatory fasting. Optional fasting and not obligatory fasting. Then when a woman has, and the meaning of obligatory fasting here is Ramadan specifically, because other obligatory fasting, that is the time for it, waqt muwassa, is a time that's left open. For example, qada'u ayami Ramadan, to make up days that were missed in Ramadan. This is left, and it's not required that a person begin fasting them in the beginning of Shawwal and not break fast. Rather, this is left for a person to make this up at his ease. So, being that this is the case, the woman may or may not fast, for example, tomorrow. And her husband is in town, and her husband may, like to have intercourse with her in the daytime. So she, in this case, should make her choice of when to fast to make up those days of Ramadan based on when the husband will be available, when the husband might need her, and when the husband will give her permission to fast. Why is that? We understand that from the hadith of Aisha that we've already discussed, that sometimes she would not be able to make up her days of fasting until Sha'ban, the 8th month, right before Ramadan. The explanation of that is because she was busy with the Prophet ﷺ serving and making sure that he got his needs. So that she would be with him often, and that she would not be able to make up her days all the way until Sha'ban. So that shows that Aisha would delay making qada Ramadan and put that after the need of the Prophet ﷺ. So in the qada, making up the day of Ramadan is an obligation. However, doing it, for example, on the 2nd of Shawwal, right after the Eid, is not an obligation. Nor on the 3rd, or the 4th, or any specific day. Rather, it's left to the person at their leisure, at their ease. And the best thing is to do it early and quickly, and to rush to fulfill one's duty to Allah Azza wa Jal. However, there's no obligation for you to make the days of Ramadan up starting on the 2nd of Shawwal, the first permissible day of fasting. Of course, you can't fast on the 1st of Shawwal, being the Eid al-Fitr. So it's not an obligation to fast on any specific day. So then a woman puts forth the obligation of serving her husband and being in the service of her husband in front of the option that she has of picking that day for fasting. Now, as for the other obligations of fasting, like the kafara, the feeding of 60 or fasting 60 days consecutively, then does a woman have to make a kafara? That's not clear to me right now. In the two cases that we have, dhihar is specific to a man saying to a woman, "You're like the back of my mother to me." So this is for a man. Second case is when the man has had intercourse with his wife in the daytime of Ramadan, then he has to make a kafara. Free a slave if he can't do that. Fast 60 days if he can't do that. Feed 60 poor people. A number of scholars said from that hadith, that man, remember the hadith, and at the end he said, "There's no one here." The Prophet ﷺ brought the dates, and he told him to feed poor people with these dates. And he said, "Poor people poorer than me?" And so the Prophet ﷺ laughed until his teeth were showing, and he said, "Take the dates and feed your family." Okay, this hadith, he did not tell the man from the beginning of the hadith to the end of the hadith, he didn't tell him and inform your wife that she has the same penalty to pay. She has the same kafara. So here we have what's called ta'khir al-bayan or adam al-bayan. No clarification for the woman that she also has to free a slave, or fast 60 days, or feed 60 poor people. Nothing was directed to her. So a number of the scholars said that this expiation is something for the man only, and not for the woman. Because had it been for the woman that she has to make up just like the man, make up for that act, even if she was a willing participant, then the Prophet ﷺ would have been bound to ask the man to inform his wife that she also must perform the same expiation. So it seems to me that category of making up of the expiation is for the man only, and I don't see how a woman would have that obligation right now. The fourth case is the fasting that is an obligation because of a nadhr, because of a vow. And that one, for a woman, is possible. However, the phrase of the vow depends on what she had pronounced. If she said in her vow, "I vow to Allah, I promise, or I make an oath, I'm going to fast the 2nd day of Shawwal all the way to the 10th day of Shawwal." If that was her vow, then she has specified the days that she has to fast. And to fulfill her vow and be obedient to Allah, holding to her vow, يُوفُونَ بِالنَّذْرِ وَيَخَافُونَ, they hold to their vows. To fulfill this vow, she would have to fast on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, all the way to the 10th. And then there's no choice for her to pick other days. She didn't make a general vow, "I'm going to fast 8 days in Shawwal." Had she done that, she would be allowed to put this day off until the next day, or to organize them in accordance to her husband's needs. So when she has taken that vow and specified the days, then she has to fast that day, and she has no choice. So to summarize, when the woman has a choice to choose a day, even if it's an obligatory fast, then she should put that off if her husband requests her for that day to be available, that he has an indication, or that he possibly would want to have intercourse with her on that day, or that he doesn't give her permission to fast on that day. As for all the optional fasts, then they're all definitely second to the obligation that she has to her husband. The last one, the optional days?
No, the last point.
The vow.
Like if the husband says no, she has to make it. She has to do the fast.
Yeah, the phrase of the verdict of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam is لا تصوم المرأة وباعلها شاهد إلا بإذنه. A woman may not fast with her husband present except with his permission.
Even if she vows.
If she vowed to fast, then it becomes an obligation on her to fast. Then the question goes beyond that of her taking that vow to fast without her husband's permission. That becomes another issue. But she took a vow and the vow is effective and she has to fast on a specific day, then she has the obligation of fulfilling that vow. And Allah knows best. Chapter number 75. Babun fi as-sa'im yud'a ila walima. The chapter of a fasting person being invited to a walima. Notice Abu Dawood has put some of his fiqh in the chapter here, that he called this chapter the chapter of a fasting person being invited to a walima. And in the hadith of his chapter, there's no mention of a walima. There's no mention of the actual wedding celebration. Rather, the phrase is more general than that. However, the majority of the scholars understood the obligation of responding to the invitation and taking the invitation, that is the right of every Muslim, that obligation is for the wedding feast only, and that all other invitations are recommended. And this one is an obligation on the Muslim only. And some people are, generally invite people as an invitation, a general one, just come over my house for dinner, and they use the hadith, فَإِذَا دَعَاكَ وَإِذَا دَعَاكَ فَأَجِبْهُ. If he invites you, then take his invitation, and it's from the basic rights of a Muslim on another. The hadith comes with the further phrase, as mentioned by Shu'bah, that we didn't understand the hadith until we gathered it from 50 different routes. You gather this hadith from different routes, you find the phrase comes in the hadith, إِذَا دَعَاكَ لِعُرْسٍ لِوَلِيمَةِ عُرْسٍ. If he calls you and invites you to a wedding feast, then you have to respond to it. That's the right of a Muslim. And that's the majority's understanding of that as well. And you see Imam Abu Dawood, he has that understanding, and he puts that in his chapter title. He put the word walima in the chapter title to clarify that this is not general for all invitations, that this is specific to the wedding invitation only. He mentions the hadith from Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and this hadith is collected by Imam Muslim. Generally, when I skip the discussion of the chain, it's because the hadith is found in either Bukhari or Muslim or both. Muslim, as you may have detected, Muslim collects this hadith as well on the authority of Abu Hurairah, and Abu Dawood's phrase here that he brings is that the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا دُعِيَ أَحَدُكُمْ فَلْيُجِبْ فَإِنْ كَانَ مُفْطِرًا فَلْيَطْعَمْ وَإِنْ كَانَ صَائِمًا فَلْيُصَلِّ. If one of you is invited, and it's left general like that, if one of you is invited, then let him respond and take the invitation. General phrase. Look back at the chapter title. The chapter of a fasting person being invited to a walima, to a wedding feast. That's the fiqh of Abu Dawood here, that the meaning of this hadith is for wedding feasts, and it's in line with the majority's position. فَإِنْ كَانَ مُفْطِرًا فَلْيَطْعَمْ. So when this invitation comes to you, now further clarification from the Prophet ﷺ, people who are invited are of two types with regards to fasting. Either they're not fasting, or they are fasting. So if you're muftir, if you're not fasting that day, then go and eat. Go and eat. The order from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. وَإِنْ كَانَ صَائِمًا. However, if he's fasting, فَلْيُصَلِّ. Then let him pray. Let him pray. Make salat. What does that mean? Look to the explanation. Hisham. Who's Hisham? Ad-Dustawai, narrator of the hadith from Ibn Sirin. He says, وَالصَّلَاةِ الدُّعَاء. And prayer here means dua. One of the meanings of prayer in the Arabic language of salat is dua. It is to supplicate. So what is he to say in his supplication? He is to supplicate for the host in general. The meaning is, yes, and to keep his fast. If he is muftir, let him eat. And if he's fasting, let him make salat. Let him pray for the host. At the same time he attends. But he makes dua for the host. Because why? Both of these categories are after the generality of the obligation of responding to the wedding invitation. So you're obliged to respond. And then when you respond, there are two interactions you'll have with this food and the event. One is you're not fasting, then you have to eat. The other is you're fasting, so you stay away from where they eat and you just attend the occasion and you make dua. Specifically, some of the scholars said فَلْيُصَلِّ means to say بَارَكَ اللَّهُ لَكُمَا وَبَارَكَ عَلَيْكُمَا وَجَمَعَ بَيْنَكُمَا عَلَى خَيْرٍ, or in one narration فِي خَيْرٍ. May Allah bless the two of you. May Allah bless what you will get, the two of you, in what you will get. Barakallahu lakuma. May Allah bless you what you will get. Wa baraka alaykuma. And may Allah send upon you blessings. And may He gather the two of you in goodness. The dua said to the man who has been married. Or the woman says this to her sister who just got married. Yarhamukallah.
You let the person know that you're fasting?
Is it what?
You let the person know that you're fasting? If they invite you?
I think that's obvious. The question is, do you let the person know you're fasting when he invites you?
Yeah.
Allahu A'lam. Do you have to? Allahu A'lam. When you refrain from eating, you should let him know. Otherwise, there may be suspicion. That you don't trust him, you don't like his food, he may have bad feelings about you. This is my walima, why won't you eat? So at least, at the very latest, when it's time to eat, you inform him that I'm fasting on that day. Not mentioned. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا دُعِيَ أَحَدُكُمْ فَلْيُجِبْ وَإِذَا كَانَ مُفْطِرًا فَلْيَطْعَمْ وَإِذَا كَانَ صَائِمًا فَلْيُصَلِّ وَأَطْلَقَهُ. The Prophet ﷺ left it general without specifying it to the obligatory fasts or optional fasts. No. Of course, it cannot be Ramadan. No. In Bukhari and Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ, this is the other narration of the hadith which specifies it to the wedding feast. It's narrated from Nafi', the freed slave of Ibn Umar, that Ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu narrated from the Prophet ﷺ that he said, إِذَا دُعِيَ أَحَدُكُمْ إِلَى وَلِيمَةٍ or إِلَى الْوَلِيمَةِ فَلْيَأْتِهَا. If one of you is invited to a walima, then let him respond to the invitation. In one narration, فَلْيُجِبْ, let him, same meaning, respond to the invitation. That's in Bukhari and Muslim. And that's what many of the ulama use, or one of the things that most of the ulama use to specify the obligation of responding to the invitation to the wedding feast only. Now, the second hadith, which is in Sahih Muslim, is more of an answer to the brother's question. Look at the next chapter, you will see something related to the answer to your question. باب ما يقول الصائم إذا دُعِيَ إلى الطعام. Now this it's not specific to a wedding invitation. As mentioned in the chapter title, any time a fasting person is invited to eat, what should he do? At a wedding feast or anywhere else? When a person's fasting and someone says, come here and share this with me, or invites him to eat, what does he do? There's free, fresh veggie pizza. Please come eat some. The Prophet ﷺ said on the authority of Abu Hurairah, إِذَا دُعِيَ أَحَدُكُمْ إِلَى طَعَامٍ وَهُوَ صَائِمٌ فَلْيَقُلْ إِنِّي صَائِمٌ. If a person is invited to eat some food and he's fasting, let him say, I am fasting. And that would be not understood to be at the time of the invitation to a wedding feast, right? But at the time when he would be called at the wedding feast to come and eat. So when the food is there and the people say, come and eat. Well, here the scholars mention that fasting is not an excuse to be excused from the wedding invitation. That which is the right of every Muslim on another. It is not from the established excuses that will excuse you from this religious obligation that you're fasting. Why? Go back to the first hadith. That there's a sunnah for you to do if you're invited to a wedding feast and you're fasting. That you go and make dua for the married couple. That you not avoid the gathering. You still give them the right, that basic right, that's one of the 6 basic rights established from the hadith in Sahih Muslim. حَقُّ الْمُسْلِمِ عَلَى الْمُسْلِمِ سِتْ. The right of the Muslim upon another Muslim, there are 6 rights. There are 6 rights. إِذَا لَقِيتُهُ فَسَلِّمْ عَلَيْهِ. When you meet him, give him salams. That's one of them. I don't have it memorized in order. Anyone have the hadith memorized in order? That's not next. وَإِذَا اسْتَنْصَحَهُ فَانْصَحْ لَهُ. When he asks you for advice, give him advice. وَإِذَا دَعَاكَ وَإِذَا اسْتَنْصَحَكَ فَانْصَحْ لَهُ. If he asks you for advice, then give him advice. وَإِذَا دَعَاكَ فَأَجِبْهُ. And if he invites you, then take his invitation. Again, put into perspective or into context by the other ahadith which mention the walima. وَإِذَا عَطَسَ فَحَمِدَ اللَّهِ فَشَمِّتْهُ. And if he sneezes and he praises Allah, then شَمِّتْهُ, say يَرْحَمُكَ اللَّهِ. وَإِذَا مَرِضَ فَعُدْهُ. And if he's sick, and I believe this is the correct order, inshallah, if he is sick, then visit him. وَإِذَا مَاتَ فَاتَّبِعْهُ. And if he dies, then follow him, meaning follow his funeral procession. These are 6 rights of the Muslim. So one of them is responding to his invitation. Now, we said that fasting is not an excuse for that wedding invitation. So then what are the valid excuses for the wedding invitation? Sickness is one of them, being sick. The sickness that would cause someone to break fast or to be excused from, or to what? To not attend the masjid. He's sick. Okay, safe. Disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the wedding. Ahmed. That one of them? Previous engagements. A walima, like it, you already committed to attending, or another obligation. Some from online? Okay, they had that online, acknowledged. What else? Al-Iraqi, Abu Zar'a al-Iraqi, in his book Tarh al-Tathrib, a very great book in explaining hadith, he mentions 20 valid excuses. 20. Or he mentions them as conditions for the obligation of attending the wedding feast. And he mentioned that some of the scholars even felt that the wedding feast itself is recommended and not an obligation. However, 20 excuses for that not being, not taking effect, and you have to go. The first one is that the gathering does not include the poor people. Thus it is a gathering of disobedience. A gathering which excludes the poor people and it's exclusive to the rich people. The first one. Because the gathering itself has disobedience in its origin. That it's an exclusion of the poor people and inclusion only of the rich people. So you're not required to attend. Secondly, that you have not been specified with the invitation. Someone said, go invite some of the brothers. And it was conveyed to you. But no one said, go tell Ahmed Reed to come. Third one, that there's fear. You have some fear. People are looking for you to hurt you. There's someone who has a vendetta against you, who may physically harm you. This happens sometimes with people, that you're afraid of something. That same fear would prevent you from going to the masjid even. It's reached that level. So that fear for your physical harm or safety, or that, and he mentions, and this we'll make this a separate one because it really doesn't have anything to do with the first one I mentioned. The fourth one, we'll call it, that going there is something that he'll request the people to cooperate on some falsehood. Perhaps zur, qawl az-zur. You know what that is, Anwar? Conspiracies. So you'll be asked to do something, or you're sure that this is a cooperation upon something evil, something false, something harmful. That's number 4. Then number 5, that the one who invited you is a Muslim, because this is a basic right of a Muslim upon another Muslim. So the invitation of a non-Muslim would not be an obligation on you in Islam. For an aqiqah, for a wedding feast. So a non-Muslim invites you. That's not a right in Islam. It's a basic right of a Muslim on another Muslim that you take his invitation to the wedding feast. However, this doesn't enter into that because he's not a Muslim. And then not that it's haram to attend the wedding feast, you look into what might happen in that wedding feast and what the situation is, and the judgment is made after that. And we'll continue between the adhan and the iqamah, inshallah. That's 5 so far? Number 6 is that if his wedding feast goes on for more than 1 day, then the obligation would be to attend the first day's activity or the first day's feast. Some people have a wedding feast and they are very extravagant. So if he says, I'm having a wedding feast that's 2 weeks long, you would not be obliged to attend every day. Go one time and you go on the first day. That's extravagance anyway. Sixthly, that's number 6. Number 7 is that you have not excused yourself at the time of the invitation in a way that was pleasing or acceptable to the host. He says, Anwar, please come to my wedding feast. And you say, can you please excuse me, I've got a lot of things to do tomorrow. And he goes, okay, I don't want to be difficult with you, no problem. And it's okay with him. Then it's not an obligation, even though you've been invited to a wedding feast. But here you've excused yourself in a way that was accepted by the host. Number 8. This is what was mentioned in the previous engagement, that someone else has invited you to a wedding feast. He mentioned specifically you have an obligation to attend another wedding feast. However, we could say any other obligation, specific obligation on you, whether it's taking care of your family, going to work at a certain time, which is your obligation, to take care of your family, or to attend school at a certain time because you're in a university or something. These are obligations to fulfill. An appointment, depending on the appointment, is it obligatory to keep that appointment or not? I mean, for example, I'm glad you said that. You have a dental appointment. Okay, you have a dental appointment. It takes about 2 weeks to get a dental appointment maybe, or whatever. You have an appointment with a doctor or a dentist. It's not an emergency, just a routine thing. Alright. Are you excused? Is this an obligation to attend this dental appointment? You can call and reschedule, right? As long as you give him enough notice, you can call and reschedule. This is the obligation of a Muslim on another Muslim. 6 basic rights of a Muslim. So if you have enough time to call and change the appointment, you call and change the appointment. Bikhilaf, as opposed to when you have an emergency, you have a busted tooth, you have some obligation, you have to go, then this is an excuse for you. But your general cleaning, your general visit or something, it's an inconvenience to reorganize your schedule, but is it obligatory that you fulfill that appointment with the doctor? No, it's not. Is it an obligation to take the invitation from your Muslim brother for his wedding feast? Yes, it is. So, out of the two, you would try to cancel your optional appointment or your, non-emergency appointment. Yes?
What if the appointment you get after not 2 weeks, like 1 month, 2 months?
If it's just a general cleaning that you're not really in need of, then it wouldn't really matter, would it? If you delay a general cleaning by a month, is there any harm to you?
But what if you get it after the appointment after a month, and then you have to go to it?
Yeah?
Like you said.
Because the second one, you can't get out of it. Especially means you
Okay, you can't get out of it. Then Allah knows best. Number 8, number 9, what are we at? Number 9. That he may harm, or he may be harmed by his attendance at that gathering. He may be harmed by his attendance at that gathering, and that harm can come from many different angles. Perhaps it's the presence of foolish and silly people at that gathering who mock people, and he doesn't want to be harmed by them. Perhaps it's the presence of for example, bukhor, smoke, incense or something, and that he has a problem breathing that. So he's harmed. Something will harm him by being there. Well, we're going to get to that. But these are halal harms basically. That what is meant here are just things which are disliked or perhaps permissible, that he wants to avoid them, and it would cause harm to his reputation to be in a gathering with silly people, or people who mock others, or for example the smoke, the bukhor. Then there's no munkar. This is more of the mockery and all of that. There's no munkar. There's no evil haram thing in the gathering, like drinking of alcohol, smoking of cigarettes and the likes. So these things are not found. The ulama mention when you're in a gathering of people and someone begins to smoke a cigarette or someone begins to drink alcohol, do you just get up and walk away, or what do you do? And it's very important to note that if you are able to forbid the evil, you forbid the evil. And that's better than just getting up and walking away. That you forbid the evil and try your best to stop it before it begins, and then you remain there. Yeah. But if you are unable to stop the evil, you try to forbid the evil, or you are on the level of society, you're a child, you're young, you have no status, your statements are not listened to, or whatever, then you need to just leave, then you leave to avoid the evil thing in that gathering. Number 11. That was number 10. Yeah, number 9 was there's no harm that would be caused to him by being there. And then number 10 was no haram thing, whether it would harm him or not. For example, sitting there with people drinking, he's not actually physically harmed or anything from that. However, that's a haram thing in his presence, and he should leave the place after trying to forbid the evil, or forbid the evil and stay. Number 11, that the host is not someone who his money is haram. Someone who works at the bank, or someone who has the majority of his money is haram earnings. Number 12, it's not the invitation of a woman for a man. A woman who's not your family invites you to an invitation, and it's going to be intermingling. The 12th number, that's 12, right? That is 12, okay. I'm one behind on my list, that's why I'm getting confused here. Number 13, that you're not a judge. If you're a judge, you're excused.
Because you have to judge?
Yeah, you have to judge between these people, and if the host came to court in the morning against just another person, then you'll be biased. Mentioned by Al-Iraqi and Tarikh al-Tathrib. That's, some of the scholars mention that in a general way, that the judge does not attend the gatherings of the people, nor does he do anything that would allow him to be biased. This is thinking, Islamically, that this judge, when he comes to judge between two people, he cannot have any favoritism whatsoever at all. He's a human being and his heart wavers, and if he just came from someone's invitation, and he's still remembers that, and then he has someone else, he doesn't know who he is, he's going to lean more towards the one because he's a human being. Perhaps his heart will lean without him knowing it, no matter how pious he is. Yes?
The host has the case, or it's like the judge rather have to go to any invitation. If your profession is a judge, you don't go to any
To the invitation of the people in your city. If someone invites you outside of your jurisdiction or outside of your city, then you can take the invitation. But within your jurisdiction, the people that you are judging between, you may not take the invitation. That's an opinion. It's not. It's the safest position for a judge. However, there's no hard evidence to prevent a judge from taking an invitation. However, it seems to be safest. Number 14, and I'll just run through the rest so we can make the salat. Number 14 is the one who invites you is an upright person. An upright person who's not crazy, who's basically not insane. Person has his mind, a sound-minded person. Number 15. That was number 15, wasn't it? Okay, 15 is that you yourself are as well not crazy or insane, and you are right-minded. Number 16. This was mentioned. This is the weakest one out of all of them. That it should be in the time recommended for the walima, according to the customs of the people. So, for example, if someone invites you for a walima at 4 in the morning, that is totally against the time when you people gather in your gatherings here in this place. So to invite you at 4 a.m. in the morning, it's just way out of line. So you're not obliged to follow that invitation or to respond to it. 16. 17. You're not excused you don't have a sickness or a cold or any other excuse that would excuse you from salat and jama'at. If you had those excuses, that would also excuse you from a wedding invitation. Number 18. That you are a Muslim. Meaning, we do not hold the people to, if someone says, invite all the people in the city to come to my wedding invitation, and we conveyed that invitation to non-Muslims, and they didn't want to attend, then we couldn't say this is an obligation on you, and we couldn't hold them accountable and force them to attend, because this is the right of a Muslim on another Muslim. Then number 19 is that the door wasn't shut on you. Meaning that you have to attend if you were invited and you showed up and the door was left open for you. Sometimes maybe the door was shut, the place filled up and there wasn't enough food, so they shut the door. Anyone who came late was not allowed in. So here, because you're not able to enter, you're excused. You tried and you couldn't get in. They closed the door on you. And the last one, number 20, the host is not being boycotted. Or if the imam or the Muslims are boycotting someone, in a boycott that's allowed when the Muslims have power to cause some change in a disobedient person or an innovator, or someone they hope to, improve by this boycotting and putting pressure on him, that it would be impermissible to take his invitation at that time, because it would be impermissible to return his salams as well as he's being boycotted. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa ba'd. Just before our class, a note on what to do when the imam breaks his wudu or realizes he doesn't have wudu, or some other urgent need comes and he has to leave the salat. The Sahaba and the Tabi'un specifically had 3 madhabs, 3 different actions that they did. Or you can say they had 2 madhabs, 2 basic approaches. One is called madhab al-istikhlaf. The madhab or the position of appointing one person after the imam to lead the salat on his way out. And that is 2 basic approaches to that. The first one being the best and clearest one, and the having the largest number of Sahaba and Tabi'un doing it. That is to take the hand of the one that the imam wants to be the secondary imam. As the imam needs to leave, for whatever reason, he takes the one that should lead the salat by hand and puts him up to the place where the imam will be in front of the people. That's clear and the cleanest possible way of doing it, leaving no room for doubt or any confusion. The second way, inside of that madhab al-istikhlaf, to appoint someone to follow, to appoint someone to lead in place of the imam, is to do so by gesture, to point to someone or to gesture to someone to identify him that he should step forward. These were done by the Sahaba and the Tabi'in. The third one, which is a minority position, is madhab al-itmam, that the imam announces to the people that all of you must finish your salat now on your own. And this was done by, I think it's one of the Tabi'in, it might be Ibrahim al-Nakhai, I have it, I can check it, as mentioned in the Musannaf of Abdul Razak or Ibn Abi Shayba, those books that collect the narrations of the Sahaba and the Tabi'in and their fiqh issues. Muawiyah? I'll check and see what it is exactly. I have it actually recorded in a bahth. But the idea is that's the weakest of the madhabs, the weakest of the 3 positions that were attributed to the early Salaf. And Allah knows best. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.